Hello! Good morning, everybody. I hope you all had a wonderful weekend. Guess what I learned a few days ago? There's a bird that drinks other birds' blood. They call it the vampire finch, and it lives, of course, within the confines of the Galapagos Islands. According to their travel center, this astounding bird earns its common name from its unusual diet. It occasionally drinks the blood of other birds such as the Nazca or blue-footed booby. The sharp-beaked ground finch normally feeds on seeds and insects, but such things can often be in short supply on these islands. The vampire finch evolved this distinguished behavior to help supplement its diet. It uses its sharp beak to peck at the feathers and the skin of the boobies until the blood is drawn and drinks the nutritious blood to enrich its diet when seeds and insects are scarce. Strangely, these other birds, like the boobies, don't seem to mind the vampire finches drinking their blood. It's believed that this behavior evolved over time from the finches picking parasites from the feathers of the boobies, and through the ages, they would occasionally draw blood while removing insects or cleaning these birds. And so, removing parasites was beneficial to both the finch and the booby. The finch got a nutritious meal, and the booby bird was relieved from the pests in its feathers. And when the finches drew blood, they adapted to obtaining this dietary supplement. How about that? A kooky world we live in, full of awesome birds. Moving on. Today's story was inspired by a TikTok I saw the other day regarding a girlfriend who crashed her car, killing her boyfriend and another teen. I believe it happened in 2022, with sentencing last August. Mackenzie Shrill was her name, and she was charged with killing the two after a load of evidence came out that she had threatened her boyfriend's life multiple times beforehand. Not to mention, she deliberately accelerated to nearly 100 miles per hour before slamming into a brick wall. The entire story is heartbreaking. 2 families lost a loved one, and a third family has to live with their daughter's actions. Anywho, I was reading over a few cases the other week on CanadaUnsolved.com, which is another wonderful website, and I came across a similar story with an insane twist. Today, I bring you the murder of Lucas Shortreed. My name is Eli, and this is Murder in the Morning. My sources for today come from Canada Unsolved, the Wellington Advertiser, Kitchener.ct News, and the rest I will put in the description. It was Thanksgiving weekend, and in nearby Kitchener, Ontario, Oktoberfest was in full swing. The annual event draws thousands of visitors to the area from across Ontario and the United States. As crowds gathered in celebration, 30 kilometers or 19 miles away, tragedy struck. On October 10th, 2008, around 11 p.m., 18-year-old Lucas Shortreed left a party in the small rural town of Alma, A-L-M-A. He began the 14-kilometer or 8.5-mile walk home to Fergus, a charming and historic Scottish town within Wellington County. I looked up photos of this place. Waterfalls everywhere. It's just picturesque. His route home began on the quiet Wellington Road 17. This road eventually intersects with Highway 6, where Lucas would then turn right towards Fergus, but he never made it to that highway. Only minutes after midnight, an unknown person driving a 1995 or 1997 white Dodge Neon was traveling away from Alma along Wellington Road 17 when they struck Lucas in the back. He had never seen it coming. Quote, nobody knows if the driver stopped, even for a moment, to check on the teenager they killed. Instead of calling for help, the driver let Lucas die. He was found 20 minutes later by a passing motorist who called for help, but it was too late. It's certain the driver knew exactly what happened. The damage to the car would have been significant. Parts of the windshield, right passenger window, and front right fender would have been destroyed by the impact of hitting this 230-pound teenager, end quote. The scene of the crime was immediately cordoned off and studied extensively by a forensic team. They determined the car's make and model by remnants that were left on the road. The posted speed limit is 80 kilometers or 50 miles per hour, and while we don't know how fast the driver was going exactly, it was fast enough to launch Lucas 30 feet through the air before hitting the ground. According to Kitchener News, quote, Lucas's injuries were extensive. His spinal cord was severed, he had multiple rib fractures, a lacerated lung and liver, as well as a severe fracture of his left tibia and fibula. An autopsy determined his death was, quote, instantaneous. Judy Moore, Lucas's mother, received the worst phone call of her life the next day. She happened to have the day off and was in the process of moving to a new home. Not only was she devastated beyond anything I can fathom when she received this news, but she had the same questions we do. Who killed her son? A 1995 to 1997 white Dodge Neon. That was investigators' only lead. The only issue, around 8,000 white Dodge Neons were registered in Ontario at the time. Police visited every residence with this car profile within 100 kilometers or 62 miles of the crime scene. I'm using both kilometers and miles, one because that's what they do in Canada is kilometers, and two because I want to try to train myself to be able to convert them because I feel like I should be able to do that. Police were certain that the assailant wouldn't make it far without attracting attention to his damaged vehicle. They also speculated the person they were searching for lived in the area or had ties to someone within the area. Police found plenty of white Dodge Neons, but none that held any significant damage. In 2009, they came across yet another one parked outside a home on Side Road 21, which parallels Wellington Road 17, less than 2 kilometers away. Initially surprised by the closeness to the crime scene, investigators' suspicions eased as no visible damage or recent repairs or paint jobs were noticeable in the vehicle. Plus, the owners, David and Anastasia Halliburton, were nothing short of helpful. The pair was cleared by investigators, and the search continued. Soon, though, tips and leads dwindled, and police felt a sense of despair. Years passed, but Lucas's family didn't give up hope, and neither did investigators. His mother led a truck campaign in the years after, hoping to bring attention to her son's death all across Ontario and beyond. She posted her son's photo on all sorts of semi-trucks, and I'm sure they traveled thousands of miles with his face posted. In 2013, with a renewed excitement, police reenacted that fatal day, hoping to gain further insight. They even reached out to the Halliburtons, asking to use their white Dodge Neon in this reenactment, who gladly complied. Unfortunately, this desperate move wouldn't amount to any new evidence or leads. The all-important, damaged Dodge white Neon had vanished, and with it, the killer. Little did police know, the vehicle they were looking for was right there, just out of sight. In June of 2022, Ontario Provincial Police Superintendent Jennifer Spirell received an anonymous tip that would completely shift the trajectory of this case. The tipster claimed that the oh-so-helpful Halliburtons were in fact responsible for Lucas's death. According to the Wellington Advertiser, quote, police secretly checked out a large stationary trailer on the Halliburton property, and while executing a warrant on September 21st, they seized a heavily damaged white Dodge Neon stored behind a fake wall in the trailer. The Halliburtons were out on bail only days later when police secretly intercepted a conversation in which David Halliburton told a family member that he was responsible for Lucas's death. He had a few beers, he said, and struck Lucas while driving home. Quote, David Halliburton admitted he struck Lucas Shortreed, who was standing in the middle of the road, and that he saw Mr. Shortreed at the last second, but it was too late to avoid him. David told his 11-year-old son, who was riding in the back, that he hit a deer. The windshield shattered, their faces were cut from glass, and the car roof was partially caved in. But he finished the remaining 5-kilometer drive home, leaving Lucas on the side of the road. Anastasia, his wife, was home, and she tended to their wounds. Quote, "Even if I was stone cold sober, I would have done the exact same thing," David said during the intercepted conversation. Bleach was later poured on the car to remove any DNA evidence, and it was hidden in that trailer. Then, another white Dodge Neon was purchased, and the license plates and VIN numbers were swapped, end quote. The man and his wife who volunteered their decoy Dodge Neon had been hiding this secret for 14 years. Because both sides agree that Lucas was standing in the middle of the road, it changed the dynamic of their trial after their arrest and everything else. Quote, "Although Lucas died because he was struck by David Halliburton, his spinal cord torn, ribs fractured, organs lacerated, and bones broken, the Halliburtons are facing charges related to what came after." Both sides concede Lucas shouldn't have been walking down the middle of the road that night, and it's likely that the collision was a tragic accident. But it's not about the driving, it's about the actions since then, Justice Stanley explained. Although David was behind the wheel that night, Stanley says the blame for what followed is close to equal. David, along with his wife Anastasia, chose to hide this. It was calculated, by design, and intentional. The judge sentenced David to prison for 2.5 years and prohibited him from driving for 3. Anastasia was handed 6 months of house arrest, with the final 2 months subject to a nightly curfew, followed by 1 year probation and 200 hours of community service, end quote. The resolution and punishments for their crimes were not well received by the public, understandably. I think they too deserve much more, especially David. I mean, not only were you responsible for the death, you then chose to ignore what you did, not help the man, the boy, and then hide your crime for 14 years while his family wept and mourned and wondered. But Judy Moore, Lucas's mother, feels a sense of relief and wants others to share in this moment. Feeling exhausted, she says the family has crossed this proverbial finish line, finally getting their day in court. "It's freeing, really," she said. According to the Kitchener, to honor the 15th anniversary of his death, Lucas's mom is encouraging people to be kind, like her son was. She says, "People are frustrated about the lack of charges, but it's time for us to move on. We can't change those charges. We can't change the past. We need to move on. I would ask for people to be kind to each other because Lucas was so loving, and to just cherish their children and to give them lots of hugs." Quote, "He was very happy, funny, always laughing. He would always greet you with a big, warm hug," said Lucas's sister, Janine Beatty, adding she considered her brother to be one of her best friends, despite their 7-year age gap. And that, my friends, is the tragic story of Lucas Shortreed. Oh, he's gonna be out soon. Only 2.5 years, and she's just chilling at home. I hope, I hope they feel bad. I hope they regret what they did. I plan on covering a bunch more missing persons cases in the coming future, and I thought this was a nice reminder that there are answers out there. We just need to look in the right places. I do hope you enjoyed that story, sad as it may be. Thank you so much for listening today. I truly appreciate it. And if you'd like, stick around for a bonus story after the music. Okie dokie. Bye-bye. Alrighty. I had completely forgotten that I had been catfished a few months ago until I came across this article by Casey Baker and Wendy Cantor titled Catfish Couple Allegedly Drugged Man Before Trying to Take Over His Home. Quote, even in retirement, Curtis England was always on the move. The 74-year-old Mercer Island, Washington resident kept active by doing CrossFit, hiking, and mountain climbing. He would trek up the Half Dome at Yosemite National Park, climb Mount St. Helens in the fall, and much more. We did some serious, strenuous climbs together, England's close friend and hiking buddy Richard Sater told People. He was very, very fit and certainly took his health and fitness seriously. The 2021 death of England's partner of 41 years forced him to rebuild his life, including seeking companionship. In January, he told Sater how he tried online dating and met a younger man named Philip Brewer who was 32 on a site called Scruff. Funny, I haven't heard of that site. But the happy retirement years England envisioned for himself ended in tragedy when he was found dead on March 7th, 110 miles away from his home in Grays Harbor County after being reported missing on February 24th. It's horrible, says his neighbor Lori Gokin. He was a youthful 74 with many years ahead of him still. Investigators soon learned that England had allegedly been the target of online criminals who met him on a dating website only to steal his identity and drain his accounts. It's just so sad because he was the best, said England's niece Tara. He was fun. He was just so involved with our kids, wanting to know every bit about their lives and what they were doing. When my kids were home from college, he would sit and have conversations with them for hours at the dinner table, end quote. England's ordeal began in January when he met Brewer online and then in person for coffee and a hike, inviting him back to his home on January 13th to watch a movie. England said he fell asleep, and when he woke up, Brewer was gone, and so were England's wallet, phone, and car keys. He called the police and learned that thousands of dollars had been transferred out of his accounts. 6 weeks later, Sater and England's family members received improperly worded texts purporting to be from him in the middle of the night, saying he was going to be away for the next 3 to 6 weeks. Knowing what a stickler England was for proper grammar, his loved ones knew that something was wrong. They became further worried when England allegedly said someone named Christina would be renting out his basement. When they couldn't reach him by phone, they called the police and reported him missing. Using phone records and a GPS, authorities found his remains at a dump site near Cosmopolis. In the ensuing homicide investigation, detectives started looking into Brewer and a woman named Christina Hardy, who was 47, who they found at England's house. They told officers they were renting England's basement and didn't know where he was. After receiving a tip from a witness, authorities said they believed that Brewer and Hardy snuck into England's house in the middle of the night after a violent confrontation. The two then injected him in the neck with a potent dose of fentanyl. They drove more than 100 miles to Cosmopolis with England in the trunk of his own 2003 Camry. When they arrived at the dump site, they realized he was still alive. As a result, quote, Christina Hardy held him down while Brewer stabbed him in the neck with a knife. The pair was arrested on March 14th in Southern California and pleaded guilty to charges of murder, kidnapping, and identity theft. They are each being held on a $5 million bond in a King County jail. As they await trial, England's friends and family are still dealing with the aftermath of this brutal killing. We lost a really lovely human, said Gokin, who remembers how he would bake cookies and bring them over to her house and share tomatoes, peas, and rhubarb with her and her family. She still tends to the garden he loved so much to honor his memory. His daffodils are blooming, she said, adding that she couldn't believe someone so generous and so caring came to such a terrible end. If it was just over money, she said, how is that worth a person's life? End quote. It isn't. Don't kill people. At the very least, you know? Welp, that is all I have for you beautiful people today. Thanks again for hanging out. I hope you enjoyed at least one of those stories, huh? And I will see you in a few days. I wrote, I'll see you next in a few days. Okie dokie. Bye-bye. Love you.